Years ago, but have managed then to create this baby, making a play on the mother's instinct. But I was reading, and I don't know, you can't believe everything you read on the internet, but that you were hoping to start a book club, the two of you, with Emily Blunt. Is that true?
I tried.
She
I
did.
tried. They were working and I was not. So you guys were busy. But the book actually was adapted into a beautiful series by a fantastic writer named Bash Doran, starring Thomasin McKenzie and Sean Clifford, two actresses I've been lucky enough to work with, and it was called Life After Life, and it was by Kate Atkinson. And I don't know if you ever read it. Jessica, you ever have that?
Is the book Life After Life?
Yeah. So I tried to get that one going, but maybe someday.
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 I mean, I'm always reading things that have to do with what I'm working on. So it's very rare that I get time to actually read for pleasure.
I'm going to record the book for you over voice memo, like
I'll
I'll just get it to you that way.
I will listen
as you fall asleep.
Listen, I hear the podcast of the Anne and Jessica and Emily book club. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on Women's Hour. Best of luck with the film.
Thank
you so much. Nice to see you.
You too. Jessica Chastain and Anne Hathaway, and Mother's Instinct is released on the 27th of March. I asked you for your comments, to get in touch with who is your support system. Who do you turn to in times of trouble, following on from the Princess of Wales that has said she has a cancer diagnosis, and we've seen her brother post publicly about being there to support her. Well, here's a message that I got from Liz. She's in Newark-on-Trent. She says, "My father is next door, dying of cancer. The responses from my close friends have been diverse and illuminating. The ones who just phoned immediately and listened as I sobbed and gasped, doubled over, cooing at me as I regained myself. The ones who, equipped with expertise, confirmed my fears, outrage, or gently suggesting alternative views. The one who brings her children to delight my dwindling dad with their drawings and their brass band practice. Also the one who will conduct his funeral. She was at my mother's, so she knows how we do them, how it needs to be beautiful and cerebral and entertaining. And finally the one who, despite her own illness, drove for 3 hours to buy me a coffee and laugh with me. They are all there for me in their different ways." How lovely, Liz. Thank you for that. One more from Julia. "When my husband died, people were kind and offered practical help, for which I will always be grateful. But the person who touched my soul was an elderly lady I hardly knew. She said, 'You need a hug,' embraced me and pressed a miniature bottle of brandy into my hand. I don't think I ever saw her again, but this brief encounter remains precious to me nearly 30 years later." 84844. Now, if you missed the programme on Friday, Anita was live from Doncaster. Maybe you missed out, you can still catch it online. It was all about female entrepreneurs. Here's a taste of one of the women we heard from, Amy Furness, who was a nurse when she set up a dried flowers business.
So I started my business while I was nursing, and just did it sort of alongside working evenings and weekends. And then it sort of, the side hustle just grew into something bigger and bigger, yeah. So we started up at home. The house was completely chaos, as you can imagine, boxes, flowers everywhere. But we just made it work. We worked till early hours. Then I got up, did my 9 till 5 job. I worked as a practice nurse, so I worked Monday to Friday. And then used to come home and then work up until like 1 and 2 in the morning, wrapping parcels and getting stuff ready for people, yeah.
Would you say it was worth it?
100%. At the time, if you'd asked me that, I used to go to work and think, I used to dread going home because of the mess. You usually go home to just be nice and clean and quiet, have your tea. And I can remember just moving Pampers aside to put my dinner plate there, to eat my dinner, and then move the plate aside and just carry on wrapping. Yeah, it was not something that you could have done for a long time, really.
But where did that idea, the first inkling that you wanted to do something different, come from?
So I was redecorating my house because when we bought the house it needed renovating, so I was at the final stages of adding all the nice homey parts, and I couldn't find pampas grass anywhere for sale. So that's really where it started. I just went on the hunt looking for them, and I thought, surely if I'm looking for pampas grass for my house, there's other people out there who are looking for the same. And I had to make an order with a wholesaler, which had to be of a certain amount of money because they wouldn't allow me just to buy 3 stems what I wanted for my vase at home. So I ended up with this massive box of Pampers coming. I thought, like, what am I even going to do with all this? I can remember my husband said, wow, like, what's going on? And yeah, I thought, there's definitely a gap in the market, and I've always kept an open mind. Like, I've always thought I need to be, I've always just thought I can definitely do something. I want to just do something for myself, and that were it, yeah.
And you know what they say about Pampers grass, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Well, I didn't until I started it, and then I thought, I hope people don't think that.
I'll tell you later.
Am I the only person in the room who doesn't know? And now you've got your husband working with you as well.
Yeah, so we do it together, yeah, me and him do it together around the kids. It's a bit chaotic, but we make it work, so yeah, it's really good. We enjoy it, yeah.
I'm not getting into the Pampas grass discussion right here, but there are lots more stories like that. Do listen if you get a chance. Head over to BBC Sounds to hear that full programme. And don't forget, you can get in touch with us on text 84844. I want to know who's in your support circle. Now, to the first in a new series on Woman's Hour, Breaking the Cycle. Young people at risk of getting into trouble are likely to be involved with lots of agencies. Could be the police or education, justice or health systems, for example. And as the Independent Review of Children's Care put it, I quote, they are all responding differently to that same teenager. Well, Shift is a new idea with the aim of tackling this. There are currently 4 shift practices running around the country. 4 more are on the way. And over the first year of a new one in Greater Manchester, our reporter Joe Morris went out and about with the team. First, Sally Dickin from Shift, who paints a vivid picture of the young people that they're trying to help.
A 6-foot-tall 17-year-old who stinks of weed and grunts at you doesn't evoke a lot of sympathy in a lot of people. It's not everybody's cup of tea. That's not everybody's preferred profession. But it is yours. Yes. Someone's got to do it.
Shift is all about relationships. Guides are skilled practitioners who work with young people. The aim is to reduce reoffending and to find solutions and ways forward for those most at risk of getting into serious trouble. They look for what they call the hook, which is whatever motivates someone to reflect and start taking steps towards a better life. The hook will be different for everyone. Today you'll hear from a parent, a guide, a child, and from Sally Dickin, who now works for Shift. She used to be the head of adolescent services in Tameside, Manchester. She's a qualified social worker with 20 years experience and has worked with youth justice throughout her career. Why did she bring Shift in?
It was obvious to me that this was able to fill a gap that I could see very clearly. In youth justice, we get notified about children who are maybe coming to the attention of the police, or you just start to hear names bandied about of children who professionals are perhaps a little bit worried about. The same name keeps cropping up here and there. We can do an element of prevention work, but there's only so much we can do, and there's a big stigma around working with the Youth Justice Service as well. So we'd sort of get these children and be able to do a brief intervention with them, but there wasn't the resource to be able to do anything longer, and so you were almost waiting.
For this mum you're about to hear, and her teenage son, timing was everything. Much more from both of them later in the series.
I knew something was wrong, I had that gut feeling. Everyone was saying, don't be dramatic, it's his age, he'll come round. I kept saying to my mum, you just haven't got a clue, but wouldn't tell me what I didn't have a clue over. So for me, I think we could have stopped it a lot sooner if we would have known the right questions to ask him and how severe of a risk he was facing.
You can see children, and it's not a criticism of systems, but they can be getting arrested and there's no outcome, and then they might be arrested 3 weeks later, so that's another offence, and there's still no outcome for the first one, and in that time no one's working with them to help to prevent it from happening. So yeah, that's frustrating. All the evidence suggests the sooner you can get in when children start to get into trouble, the greater impact you're likely to have. And I'm not saying that other professionals can't build those relationships, they absolutely can. There's time constraints around how far they can go.
What was the most appealing thing for you about the shift approach?
The low caseloads, meaning that the workers are able to rip up the rule book and spend time doing that relationship building without the constraints of, right, well, it's 3 months, where have you got against the goals that were set around this intervention plan? And don't get me wrong, there is goal setting, but with a focus on getting that hook and getting that young person actually engaged. They're not working with you because they've got to, because they've got a court order, or because, you know, they've got an outcome from the police. They want to. Something might go wrong. Actually, your shift worker doesn't go away. They're still going to be there, stuck to you like Velcro.
One of the first guides I met at Shift was a woman called Imogen. I think this voice note that she sent me shows her dedication to the children she worked with.
So it is just after 7 o'clock. I'm sitting in my car, it's dark outside. I've just dropped off a young person. We went to Nando's. They've been telling me all about what happened when they were stabbed, and down to every little detail, including the dinner that they had when they got back to their house, and how now when they eat that thing, that food, spaghetti, all they can do is remember what happened that day. So just drop them off, and now I am going to pick up a young woman who's 17. What often is quite sort of challenging is switching from one young person to another, particularly when they're telling you things which are deep, difficult stories. Hopefully our time together will be what she needs.
The idea is that guides stick around for 18 months. Of course, that is not always possible. Sadly, Imogen died suddenly in May last year after a short illness. The impact of her death is still being felt in the team and amongst the young people she worked with. It seemed important to pay tribute to her here. Manchester guide Robin is clear that the relationships at the heart of Shift take time to build.
There's times when a young person might not want it or might not be ready, and I think you have to respect that to an extent. That was a thing at one point where I did kind of get told not to come back and stuff like that.
Do you see that as a challenge?
Yeah, but probably in a positive way. Probably, yeah. It definitely kind of ignites something in me. Makes me more inclined to find out what's really going on then for this young person. What's the reason why they're not engaging? Coming back and actually showing them, okay, hi, it's me again. I'm still here. Like a text message or just kind of popping in when they're at school and just seeing how they're doing. That can be just enough.
So how were the young people who would be involved selected?
The starting point was to ask professionals who were the children who kept them awake at night, who were the children who, if we didn't do something, they were going to have really poor outcomes, who were the children who they were really struggling to engage as well. We then looked at all the different data around them, how many exclusions they might have had from education for social care involvement, did they have any youth justice involvement, and then we were able to look at who are the ones who aren't currently getting a service or who are just on the periphery.
So you started off with 83.
Yeah.
And you eventually whittled it down to?
27. Yeah. Some of them just chose themselves. There were a lot of names that I knew, and being the head of youth justice, you get the overnight arrests, or they were starting to go missing and coming through on the police missing list. I knew that they'd been bubbling, if you like, and it wasn't easy. Every single child, you know, you wanted to help. Of the 27, we've got 2 girls.
It's not many, is it?
No, but it's absolutely representative of the youth justice system in terms of children who end up in trouble with the police. Does that mean that they're not involved in stuff? Or does it mean that they're not as readily arrested or stopped, or they're not drawing as much attention to themselves? I don't know.
So how do young women normally present to you then?
They can be quite angry, always vulnerable, and difficult backgrounds. These are girls who've fended for themselves quite a bit.
remember what you thought of Robin when you first met her? Do you remember how she came in and met you?
I've never a worker like her.
You've never had a worker like her?
Yeah, different. She's nice.
What does she do that's nice?
Checks on me. Stop me from getting in trouble.
Do you find it hard to keep out of trouble? Or have you in the past?
Yeah. I used to always get in trouble. No, I don't.
We know what the risk factors are, being out of education. School is a huge protective factor in terms of having eyes and ears on children, monitoring them.
So you're dealing with really complex issues.
Yeah.
How hard is it to help some of the young people you're working with? How hard is it for you to reach them?
Really hard. These aren't young people who are sat there waiting for someone to come along and help them. They can often be mistrustful of adults. That's what ultimately this is about. It's getting young people to take charge and control of their own lives and their own futures, recognise their own worth and be able to see a future for themselves. It can be very, very hard and very challenging, but also very rewarding. Oh gosh, when I first came into social work, you came into it thinking I was going to change the world. And you quickly, especially in the field of youth justice, you quickly change your opinion on that. And you're just grateful if someone smiles at you or says thank you. I love the young people. They're often very charismatic once you break down the barrier and you start to see the person underneath and they realise they're not being judged. And you start to see the child as opposed to the image.
What sort of teenager were you?
Out in Manchester city centre in nightclubs. So don't get me wrong, I was good and I worked hard at school. I was very lucky. I had supportive parents who supported me to achieve as much as I could. The children who I see coming into the service that I work for have not had that opportunity.
Sally and I are both mums of young men, and it would be fair to say we've both had our moments. The relationship between the guide and the young person is not parental. It's something different.
Sometimes the role of the guide can be to just bring some clarity and some calm and some sort of shared understanding between young person, parent, carer. Dead easy professionally. I've got a teenage boy. Everything that I know professionally goes out of the window as soon as emotion comes into it.
So how's that going?
Yeah.
Are there some young people who keep you up at night?
Oh yeah, there are. We've still got children who are going missing. Just because they've got a shift guide doesn't mean that they're magically turned around overnight. This takes time, and that's always a worry. You can't force it, but at some point they will get it and see this as being a bit different. So it's got to be at that young person's pace. That's part of the joy when they're suddenly pleased to see you. They don't want to admit it, but you get a little smile.
Small wins.
Absolutely, 100%. It's small wins.
Tell me about Eva.
Eva, she's one of our guides. She gets the young people. You can tell when you interview people who like teenagers, the way that they talk about them, they smile and you can see a genuine warmth. You can't fake that. That's what the kids feel as well. Because they can sniff you out, kids. They know if you're genuine.
And tell me about Robin.
Robin, she worked in school. What came across was, I'm in this role currently and I see so much more that I could be doing and I just want to do so much more. She's young, energetic.
What would you say to someone who thinks these kids are just problem kids and it's too late? You can't change their situation or their behaviour.
I'd say, try and step into their shoes. Could you imagine if your whole life was defined about something you'd done wrong? If everyone who looked at you looked at your worst day of your life or looked at the worst thing you've ever done and that was what they only ever talked about when they talked about you? Because that's what life's like for some of these kids. As a society, what do we actually want for these young people. We want them to be productive members of society who are achieving well, living law-abiding, productive lives, contributing to the community and contributing to the economy. And then ask yourself, well, how do we get them to be that? If you think the answer is by punishing them and saying that they're all rubbish, then that's your conclusion, but that's not mine. It's by making them believe that they've got a brighter future and that they can be more than what society currently thinks they are. In terms of the cost of running a programme like Shift, if we just prevent one or two from going into custody or into care, then it's paid for itself. It's really hard to demonstrate when you're trying to prove something hasn't happened.
Are you hopeful?
Always hopeful. You've got to be working with teenagers.
Joe Morris was the reporter there. Tomorrow, Joe will be out on the road with one of the Shift guides. That's Eva, riding shotgun in a Mercedes A-Class, fielding calls and hanging on the telephone. I'm looking forward to hearing that. I was asking you earlier about your support system. Who do you turn to in times of trouble? But I want to read a message that came into us. She says, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease when I was 26 and studying for my degree in Spain. I was desperately unwell and I had nowhere to live in England. My two beloved sisters, Sam and Mand, came to my rescue. They ran a pub in Tottenham on the Tottenham Court Road in London, and they took me to live with them, and they cared for me through my illness and treatment, coming to my hospital visits for treatment every day, as well as running their business, and even letting me top and tail in their beds when I was feeling really bad, like we did when we were little. I wouldn't have got through such a difficult time without them. It's now 30 years later, and they're still my best friends and support system. I love them and appreciate them enormously. And it's Man's 55th birthday today. Happy birthday, Mans. And thank you for your message coming in to Woman's Hour there of your sister. Well, next I want to turn to an author who made a huge personal sacrifice to bring her debut novel to the world. These Letters End in Tears follows the stories of two girls, Fatima and Bessem, who spot each other across a football field. And Fatima, the only girl playing among a sea of boys, with a wink in Bessem's direction, starts a relationship that will shape both of their lives. In Cameroon, where this story is based, same-sex relationships are punishable by law. Mushi Teji Xavier felt she had to leave her home country in order to publish it. She now calls the UK home, and I'm pleased to say she joins me in the Woman's Hour studio. Xavier, good morning and welcome to Woman's Hour.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let us start with Bessem and Fatima. I mentioned them there. Why did you want to tell that story?
Being gay in Cameroon is probably one of the worst places in the world to be gay. Gay people in the country have to face discrimination, social stigma, lack of protection, legal persecution, sometimes forced marriages, and they can't access healthcare for fear of being outed by healthcare professionals. There are so many challenges, but what I love seeing is that even under such awful conditions, they still find ways to persevere and build communities. Soulmates are still finding each other. People are falling in love every day. Some people say that it's a choice to be gay. I mean, why would anyone in their right mind want to live that kind of life in a place like Cameroon? I'm a hopeless romantic. I believe in love so powerful that it can overcome anything. So in my book, I was trying to not just capture the struggles of gay people in Cameroon, but also to celebrate love, that beauty can grow even in dark places. And the reason I decided to tell this story is because I'm very passionate about representation and visibility for the LGBTQ plus community. Storytelling, I believe, is a very powerful tool that can be used to change minds, challenge stereotypes, and just create more empathy for other people. I wanted to help people understand LGBTQ plus people more, especially in Cameroon, where these voices have been silenced for so long and misrepresented. I hoped that that my book would inspire dialogue, get people talking. Maybe that can lead to a more inclusive society. I'm not the first one in my country to speak out on the topic. I won't be the last. I just hope to see more positive LGBTQ plus content.
But I think we actually hear very little from Cameroon in the UK, and I think that's why I was so pulled in by your book. It is beautiful. I found it heartbreaking. It comes in a series of letters of Bessem to Fatima, and I feel like we know these characters intimately, particularly Bessem, by the time we finish this book. Tell me a little, was it based on anything you saw or knew in Cameroon, the person of Bessem?
Oh, you mean like how I created the character?
I mean, it's so well-rounded. I feel like I can see her when I even think about the book.
Well, compulsory heterosexuality is very common in Cameroon. When a woman is of age, she starts getting these questions. When are you going to get married? And I know a lot of people who have, you know, gotten themselves involved in unions they are not ready for. And Bessem is beautiful. She's smart. She's young, but she's strong-willed in that she has managed to stand her ground in the face of that pressure to get married. She doesn't care what anybody thinks. She's also judgmental. She's not perfect. She's judgmental in the way that most African aunties are, because she's an African auntie, always in your face asking you, why is your skirt so short? You're getting fat. She's also very loyal. You can see that in her relation, how she stays true to Fatima through the years, and in her relationship with her best friend Jamal. Her life is also very sad. You see, she lives in constant fear of being found out, how that is going to affect her reputation, which she has worked very hard to build. And you can see in how her family knows about her sexuality. You see how that has affected the relationship with her family and her first best friend. So yeah.
And Fatima instead a completely different character.
Yeah, Fatima is a very completely different character.
With her, there's also what we come up against them, that they're also from different religions. Tell me why you decided to bring that into the book.
Cameroon is majority Christian, and we have a small population of Muslims. I wouldn't say that there is a conflict between Muslims and Christians in Cameroon. There's a conflict between like the Francophones and Anglophones. It's not the same thing with religion, but I've always found it interesting how religion in general have the same way how they view being gay. So I wanted to my point, I was not trying to point a finger at this specific religion, this way. I just wanted to point a finger on religion in general. They share the same views.
And what they come under can be at times very violent. You talk about love and that you're a hopeless romantic, but there's also this dark side to the relationship that is there coming from other people. Do you feel that their story could be an accurate portrayal of what it's like for gay people in Cameroon today?
I would not say that the story of Bessem and Fatima can be used as an example of what being gay is like in Cameroon. It's just two people out of millions of people, but I tried my best to make it as accurate as possible. I know there's so many different stories in the country, And I hope that by telling this story, more people will be encouraged to come out and tell their own stories too.
While I was reading it, Ghana was in the news because they had a bill that they passed that imposed a prison sentence of up to 3 years for anyone convicted of identifying as LGBT. There is a Supreme Court challenge to it, and it's really interesting. The Finance Ministry warned that billions of dollars in World Bank funding could be lost if it became law, kind of punishing Ghana, shall we say, for that law. In Cameroon, the law doesn't criminalise people who identify as LGBT, but it does state that the same-sex sexual activity is illegal, so there are some parallels there. Are you watching that? Are you thinking also whether there might be any pushback to the laws in Cameroon in the way that there is pushback in Ghana?
I don't remember there ever being like a pushback to that law in Cameroon. Maybe it happened and I was too young.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that the current sentence now is 5 years with a fine. And the thing about the LGBTQ law in Cameroon is, I mean, the law says one thing, but what is happening outside is quite different. We have people who have been arrested for cross-dressing. Yeah, which is very confusing, because you read the law, it says one thing, and what is happening out on the street is not the same. Yeah, and if say for example, if people find out that you're gay, and you might be stoned to death before the police ever gets there, and even if the police gets there, I'm not sure they are going to save you, so it's really complicated like that.
I understand, and obviously I don't have a Cameroonian official to respond to the portrayal, but I do want to talk about you specifically as well. You did this at huge personal cost, writing this book, leaving your home because of the way a story like this could be interpreted in Cameroon. How difficult was that?
I started writing my book, These Letters End in Tears, in 2020. I mean, it was just something on my laptop, and when I got a book deal, this is when it became very real for me. I was asking myself all these questions like, oh, this thing was just on your laptop before, now people are going to read it, and I became very frightened because I knew what was going to happen to me. But my life is not under threat for my government in any way. I left as a precautionary measure.
Yes.
And I remember having a conversation with my publisher and my agent, and I'm like, I'm concerned about this. What if I get arrested or something? And my mentor, British author J.J. Bola, he told me to think very carefully about it. And he told me that I should know that I have the option to publish under a pseudonym if I didn't feel safe enough to publish under my name. If you ask me what was the thing I struggled the most on this journey, I would say it was deciding whether to publish under my name or under a pseudonym. I have family in Cameroon and friends I was reluctant to leave behind. I had built a life for myself there, and the idea of packing up everything just to start over in a new country is a scary thing. But I also knew that moving here, I have more chances to succeed as a writer.
I really need to let our listeners know that you're the first Cameroonian to get an international book deal. Such a huge achievement.
You know, yes, I'm the first, let me say, Cameroonian based, when I lived in Cameroon, the writer to ever get a international.
And you had to, I was watching you online, you had to convince one female publisher to take you on, because usually you would have needed a man within those negotiations to try and get that deal.
Yeah, because I was young, yes. The publishing industry in Cameroon is still struggling. The known publishers we have there, they only publish books for schools, textbooks for schools, because there's a market for that. So you do hardly find a publisher investing in, say, an individual. So, but I've seen a lot of independent publishers online lately encouraging manuscripts from writers. But for me, when I decided to self-publish my YA fiction novel, these options were not available to me. So I wrote the book. I had to edit, and then I approached a printer, paid for the cost of printing. And then I published the book myself, and it was really difficult for me to do all of that, convince them to work with me.
But you did it.
Yeah.
And the book is there now. It is called These Letters End in Tears.
No, that was my
your first one, but
self-published one. This one is my traditionally published debut novel is These Letters End in Tears.
And your full name is Mushi Tedji Xavier, but I know you go by Xavier as we have been speaking. Thank you so much for coming into us on the Woman's Hour Studio. It's such a beautiful book. We really appreciate your time. I want to read a couple of comments before we go. As about support groups, I always reach out to my closest friends. We seem to have created a group of friends who are good at a party but great at a shipwreck. I'll be back again tomorrow at 10 talking about the trend for anti-aging products for people as young as 8. I will see you then. Thanks for listening.
Women's Hour was presented by Nuala McGovern, and the producer was Sarah Crawley, with studio engineer Duncan Hammond. Next this morning on Radio 4, the journalist and author Jamie Bartlett wants to know how and why social media companies have become the new information gatekeepers, and what the decisions they make mean for all of us. In today's episode, he'll be asking if Silicon Valley's experiment is about to implode, and what impact advances in artificial intelligence could have. The Gatekeepers is next.
What's happened? Birmingham exploded.
On BBC iPlayer.
You look like somebody who could be somebody.
I want to be a poet.
A poet?
If I wrote the words, and you sung them, and this skinhead girl wrote the music.
From the creator of Peaky Blinders.
It's time a strong man stepped up. Go on, do your duty. I no longer just want this band to work, I need it to work. If you don't get away, you just become what everybody already thinks you are.
This Town.
We'll take over the whole world.
Starts on Sunday on BBC iPlayer. BBC